Welcome to the Dreams of Consciousness podcast. If you'd be so kind, would you mind introducing yourself?
Hi, Jen. So this is Alex from the band Pandemia. I'm the guitarist. I'm the one doing the international interviews, and I've been largely responsible for the new album, Dark and Devotion. So, the band decided to push me forward for this interview and to be the guy who answers your questions. So I'm super excited to be here and look forward to, hearing your impressions and what questions you have.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to speak to you about this new album and about Pandemia's history. Let's start with describing Pandemia's music. What would you say Pandemia plays? What is Pandemia?
Ooh. Yeah, we kind of define ourselves as a death metal band. uh, with the accent on the metal part, right? You can sometimes kind of reach into other genres like thrash metal, or something, perhaps, a little bit of black metal, but not so much, I would say like 2%, but definitely a death metal band with a big influence, from the like real riff metal scene. So yeah, I would. That's a good question. I've never been really asked that. But we definitely define ourselves as death metal. We come from those principles. We grew up in the days of early, like the first wave of death metal. 88, 89. When all the Death and Morbid Angel albums were coming out, and yeah, we kind of compose and present our band from this kind of source, and that's our motivational kind of power, that keeps us going. Being connected to the early roots of death metal and trying to bring a little bit of a kind of more up to date and modern approach to it.
Would you say Pandemia's music is mostly fast?
You mean past, like focusing on the kind of old school stuff, or
Yeah, like,
something like
maybe
that?
even a little bit like thrash bass in terms of your tempos and the way you use blast beats and double bass pedals and the riffing.
Yeah, yeah, possibly. I mean, we definitely kind of come out of there. We were very lucky, like with the latest album, with Dark and Devotion. We got an excellent drummer from one of the most kind of prolific guys in the Czech scene, and he brought a lot of more kind of modernized elements and approaches to playing, the rhythms for our music. So it's kind of half and half. We honor the origins of the band and where the genre comes from, but at the same time, we don't want to be just stuck in the past and become a nostalgia act. So yeah, a little bit of like it's definitely based on honoring our roots, but at the same time trying to come up with new stuff. And like in terms of creativity, the way I approach songs, I always make sure that the idea that comes through is like the pure idea. Like what you would probably say, like David Lynch mentioning. When the idea comes to you, you just work with it. And that's the same with writing music. So it's not super kind of overthought. Especially when it comes to like rhythms, guitar rhythm parts, and the riffs. It's just pure creativity. You just kind of nail it down, make sure that the execution is there, and that's uh, that's probably the biggest element. So like it's not super kind of consciously decided to play this music. It just feels very natural for us.
I'd like to speak more about the way you write songs and, the
Mm,
way you draw inspiration from people like David Lynch. But before we get there, you mentioned coming out of the first wave of death metal in bands like
mm.
Morbid Angel and Death. Can you can you tell me a little bit about the origins of Pandemia? What brought you guys together and maybe what the scene was like in the Czech Republic when you guys first started playing?
Mm, where do I start? That's that's a,
Well,
that's a big
let's start
question.
with how you met the other guys in the band and why you
Yeah,
decided to form Pandemia.
yeah, yeah. Like the core of the band formed already when we were when we were going to the elementary school, like the sixth, seventh grade. We were just little kids. And my older brother was like he brought the music into the house. He's just started bringing in tapes, and he still had a reel to reel, with loads of records. We didn't even know what artists they were. They were just like, but the sound of the music was just enchanting. And so, we formed like this circle of people around ourselves, like the late uh, 80s, early 90s, and we were always dreaming about starting a band, and a metal band, and the faster the better. So when we got to like 92, 93, we actually acquired some musical instruments. We started different bands. We like the three guys who met at the elementary school, like me, Yarda, and Pavel. That was the drummer who recorded albums 2, 3, 4, and 5. We were kind of the quite close friends, and we were playing in other bands or kind of just uh, getting ourselves kind of experience, with playing music, and then just starting to learn playing the instruments and stuff. And I think in 93, 94, me and Yarda, the bass player, we started rehearsing with one of the local drummers under the name Suffering. Uh, and we were already like trying to play death metal, of course it was very rough, and we didn't have that many skills, to kind of play anything too elaborate. It was more in the vein of like early Amorphis or early Death, those kind of compositions. And then we discovered in 94 when we did like our first demo, that there was already a band called Suffering. Uh, Somewhere in Finland, we saw it in one of the like tape trading lists. There was like Suffering, and it was kind of obscure name of their demo. And it's like, oh, we are doomed. We can't use that name. And our singer back then just uh, put forward the name Pandemia, which was super strangely sounding and unusual. We were not familiar with even what it meant, so we had to find it in an encyclopedia, and he explained to us like what it means, and we were like, okay, that sounds good. And we recorded our first demo in 1995 as Pandemia, in a lineup that was very similar to the one that was very long standing, and the lineup with which we later toured Europe and Latin America and everything. Just these three core guys from the elementary school just got together, and we managed to take it quite far. So those were like the humble beginnings. Going to concerts a lot, local Czech bands, of course. There was some. The scene was super super strong. Like the super strong element back then was the uh, influence of not influence, but like the stronghold of communism. You can imagine
Right.
the regime was very powerful. Any band that played, under the regime, they had to go and uh, kind of have their music approved. Like every band before they could record a demo, they had to go in front of the committee, and they would say, yeah, "Okay, you can release it or not." It was just ridiculous. We luckily we didn't. We started like a few years later, so we didn't get to that. But we have friends from the scene who experienced that, and they have quite a lot of stories. So when we started playing, it was after the fall of communism, and there was a huge enthusiasm. Imagine like the bubble kind of burst, right? All the bands that were kept under the radar, were kind of unleashed onto the scene, and there was a lot of huge concerts, just local bands playing for hundreds of people, and it was just beautiful, wonderful energy, and we were kind of feeding off of that as well. And one of the like biggest influences on us at the very beginning was a band called Krabator.
Yeah.
They were like the first death metal band in the Czech Republic that actually released an LP. I think it was 91. And yeah, we eventually became really close friends, and they helped us a lot with visibility, and breaking into the scene. So Yeah, that's definitely a huge influence that I can mention from the beginnings. And the Czech scene was very potent, especially 91, 92, 93. It was hundreds of people showing up at concerts, great records, really like records with incredible creativity being released. And yeah, it was a great time, It was a great time.
Hmm. I mean, some of the earliest influential death metal bands, you know, during the tape trading era were from the Czech Republic. You mentioned Cravathor. There's
Hmm.
also Master's Hammer. Did you grow up being able to hear those guys or maybe see those guys play?
Yeah, eventually, yeah. I think you were still very young, like I guess, the end of 80s, we were like, you're like 13, 14 years old. So it was hard to go to gigs. But yeah, we've seen Cravathor eventually, of course, that was more later, like 93, 94, when he started attending their concerts. Masters Hammer, they were super kind of mystical under the radar, hidden band. They just played a couple of shows. We unfortunately didn't get to see them, but we had all the demos. We had the tape trading. It was just like so alive. We were getting all the demos that were coming out of that scene. We had it all. Root, Masters Hammer, Cryptor, yeah, Cravator you mentioned. There was a really, really good band called the Dark. Dark. They also did an album called Sex and Death. And it was so advanced and so well sounding, and the compositions were incredible. Great guitar leads. Yeah, yeah. They eventually kind of changed style and it started playing more industrial metal. But that was an incredible band. And those more bands like Tortura, yeah, I think those are like the main ones I would mention from those days. Root, of course. I don't know if you've heard of Root. You know,
Yeah, I think somebody
did you
sent
did
me
you ever
the
get
album. Yeah.
try try the album Temple in the Underworld? Unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. It's like battery on steroids. It's just beautiful. They recorded in some huge studio. They had a great production. The compositions were just out of this world, super mystical, dreamy, and inspired. Yeah. But yeah, that was also a huge influence on like early days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I'm based in Southeast Asia and I grew up here. And
Hmm.
we had a similar, there's still some communist regimes here like Vietnam. And I know people
Hmm.
who've played shows in Vietnam, and it's still very much like what you're describing. Like people have to audition for the government. Like there's somebody from
Yeah.
like the Ministry of Culture or something who listens to them play,
Yeah.
and then they have
Yeah.
to decide like whether or not they're actually going to let them tour the country.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
I also
It's
remember,
ridiculous, right? Yeah.
yeah, I also
Yeah.
remember I was living in the Philippines in the 80s, and when the Marcos regime fell, originally a lot of this music was banned in Asia. Heavy metal.
Hmm.
Heavy metal was banned in a lot of countries. And then, once some of these old dictators re removed from power, you started to see a lot more Western music coming in, and that's when like our scenes here started exploding. So it would have been around the same time as what you're talking about, late
Hmm.
80s. Um, and with like the tape trading and stuff like that, people were
Hmm.
discovering music from other parts of the world. Um,
That was so interesting. Yeah. I
yeah,
didn't know like about the kind of journey on of the Southeast Asia. That would be interesting to research that a little bit. Yeah. But
yeah.
thanks for sharing that. Yeah, it's cool.
Uh,
Yeah.
Going into that first album, spreading the message. Uh, you had already kind of gravitated towards this very technical, fast death thrash style.
Hmm.
When did you guys start to write songs in that way?
Well, such a good question, man. Yeah, I'm really humbled, that you kind of recognize that. And yeah, it's yeah, that was a big shift in our kind of approach to what we wanted to play. Like the first demo was more like that was come out in '95. That was more like almost Sepultura influenced metal. There wasn't that much death in it. It's a little bit more groovy. Then the second demo, Dance in Vicious Circle, that came out in '97. That was death metal, kind of slowish. A lot of like uh, like slower tempo double kicks, but they were double kicks, So that was getting into a little bit more intense direction. We started singing and not singing, screaming in English, on the second demo. And then then we got picked up by Krabator. I don't know what they liked about us, but somehow we clicked. We were super kind of committed, to metal and playing and whatever. And they really liked it about us. And even though we were still quite juvenile and perhaps not so ready, for like the bigger world of touring, they picked us up and they started pushing us. They liked hanging out with us. So whenever they did some kind of shorter tour or when they played a bigger concert, they tried to bring us over to play with them as well. So which we are super grateful for that. And we did a mini tour with Probator and Vader. So
That's
you can
awesome.
imagine what happened.
Yeah.
Spending like 10 days touring Czech and Slovak republics with Vader. After the Profundis. It's just like you could not get influence. You could not get not influence. It just went through us completely to the very kind of core, of who we were. Those guys were just on fire. It was beautiful, beautiful. That lineup, always like cherished it, that we got to see them, and play with them. So it's that had a major influence. We were also like, Covenant came out, Morbid Angel, Malevolent Creation did Eternal. There was more blast beats in the scene. It became a little bit more kind of what to say, like more rhythmically diverse in the death metal and much faster. And we were still had that kind of inner drive to play faster and faster. So that was the kind of breaking point. And the after the tour with Vader, we kind of separated with our drummer, the guy we worked with since the school days, and we found like super enthusiastic guy, from another part of the country, but his name was Tom, and he was super into like Vader and this kind of music, and he really pushed for playing more blast beats and everything. And we were also like after the tour, we were so into it. So the music kind of started shifting towards that style, and we did a third demo in 1998 called "The Message from the Death Metal Empire," and that was very much like kind of this Vader rush kind of riffs with Vader kind of style drumming on top of it, uh, and that was pretty cool, And that's when the switch change happened, and we kind of carried on in that vein on the first album, spreading the message. I must like kind of make a disclaimer that we are fully aware that right now probably the album sounds a little bit all over the place. We had the passion, but we didn't have the tightness or the kind of experience on the instruments to pull it off. But there's a lot of kind of pure, how to say, like yeah, there's beauty in the naivety of the music we were playing back then, and there's some really good riffs. So I believe even though we could not reproduce like the energy of what it sounded like in the rehearsal space on the record, it's still kind of got some great tunes, and it was we were very lucky to get picked up by an American label, by Los Disciple Records, who put a fair amount of money, put us on tour again in through Europe and released the first album. Yeah, but a change happened between like 97 and 98, and we just were like obsessed with playing faster and more intense.
Yeah. I mean, the early albums are very ambitious in the way that you
Yeah,
play guitar. Were you really trying to challenge yourself and write as technical as you could?
yeah, yeah, exactly. We just went wild. We just didn't hold back. And we didn't practice much. We were just kind of rehearse a lot, and we took a lot of pictures. And maybe our, like our rehearsals were mainly for composing music. We didn't really, we were not worried about, whether we can play this kind of music or not. We were just there to kind of express it. And yeah, most of the songs were created in rehearsal room, and uh, it was challenging. We just went for it. There was not much kind of deeper analysis. You just, you're young. You just wanna go for it, and you have the energy. So you were doing that, yeah. But like, there's a little bit of like remorse from my side. I could have sat down sometimes and practiced a little bit, rather than just leaning onto the like the raw kind of inspiration and energy part, to pull it off. But it's okay. It came later. It came later, and I think we used the first album as kind of stepping stone, to learn what it's like to record, I don't know, 9 songs, I believe, in one go, and how, to go through the promotion cycle and everything. And yeah, it was a great experience. Yeah.
How do you feel about that album now? Because, I listen to a lot of bands who are doing like a
Hmm.
retro revival kind of old school
Hmm.
death thrash style. And honestly, like none of it is as, ambitious or as technical as what you guys were doing 20 years ago. Do you know what I mean?
Cool. Yeah, yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, it's like I say, like the riffs, and the songs are super alive. There's some really cool stuff there, absolutely. And the sound is good. Sound is pretty decent, considering we were just like first time in the studio doing a full length. And I love some of the passages and some of the parts. I'm actually, just for my kind of own satisfaction, I'm re-recording the whole album. With on my Logic for on my Mac, and I'm rediscovering the album kind of afresh, and I'm just blown away of some of the riffs are so good. I'm like, I wish we could go back in time and record it, with what we do now. It's just, yeah. Well, it was pretty vicious. Yeah, it was pretty vicious, and there was some kind of, even though we were firmly rooted in this kind of thrashy Vader death metal style, there's some original parts as well. We didn't feel the constraints of just kind of copying Vader at any cost. We also did some a little bit different stuff in there, which I'm very happy about. It's a good album. It's a good album.
Are you the main songwriter for the band? Do all the songs start with you?
Currently, yes. I was there for the first 3 albums, and the more we released, the more kind of autocratic it became. I was just like, I had more clear vision as the band progressed. And then I left in 2005, and I came back in 2020. What happened in between was just the guys were trying to make up, for kind of my initial kind of need for control. And so the 2 albums that were released while I wasn't there, they're very kind of democratic. Everybody could do whatever they wanted, which I guess was very important for them to do that, and now when I came back, that was like one of the reasons I actually came back, because Yarda was trying to restart the band, in like around 2020, 2021. And he was telling me like, just come back. And I was like, but like I'm not very kind of I'm not very collaborative person. I sure he want me back, because if I'm back, I'm gonna do most of the music myself. And he was like, that's fine. He was like, I would love to hear your riffs again and just get into that spirit. So the latest album is pretty much mainly my work. The drummer had some influence, but all the riffs, concepts, song titles, the theme itself, the artwork, everything kind of started with my ideas for that. And I put all the hours in. I was just telling someone, like, I just did an interview recently, that I feel like I've aged 10 years, during those 2.5, 3 years of putting this album together, with all the stuff that it involved. But it's been definitely worth it. Yeah, it's been a wonderful journey.
When you sit down to write, does everything start with the riff for you? Do you start with the riffs and arrange them?
Hmm. most of the time, yeah, it's definitely a riff oriented approach. I'll let the riffs come to me, especially at like unusual times. So I do sometimes kind of record my like humming into a phone, or you know, the album is all about nighttime anxieties, and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of the riffs are a collection of the stuff that kind of can't sleep. I wake up at 3 in the morning,
Yeah.
sitting there trying to sleep, can't do it. Okay, so the last resort, just grab the guitar, and suddenly there's a weird riff that didn't exist until that moment. I'm just like, wow, this is super kind of, what the fuck is this? And I just record it on my phone and just put it down, and then I'll pick it up like a few months later when I'm working on a song. I just have this pool of riffs, but most of them come from this kind of purely, like, the idea has to be pure. I would not sit down like, I don't know. Uh, Remember when Kirk Hammett wrote Enter Sandman, right? He sat down and he was like, I want to write this type of riff, and he eventually came up with it. It was almost like super controlled decision to do that. So the way I work is more like I just start noodling around and feel for what feels right, And once it feels right, then I'm like, okay, that's the riff. And I don't know when it's gonna be used where, but eventually gets used. So a lot of the riffs that are on the album are spanning all the way back almost like 20 years. Yeah, it's like I just try to pull up the best, and then when I needed to write something and I felt the inspiration, then I would add it, in the moment when I was in the recording session on my Logic doing the demos. But mostly it starts with a riff. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
The demos that you do in Logic, how complete are they? Do you have like programmed drums or anything like that? Temp drums?
Yeah, yeah, I've Toon Track. I've what is it called? It's I don't have Superior Drummer. I have the other one, Easy Drummer 3. I've loads of libraries. A lot of the libraries that I've used for the demos are from Dirk, the guy from Megadeth now. But I think he recorded while he was still in Aborted. And of a lot of his stuff, some Thomas Hacker stuff. I have a bunch of libraries, from Toontrack to Extent. I use those for the drums. And it's usually two guitars. Sometimes there's bass, and there's some idea for the vocals will go. But the demos are pretty kind of listenable and usable. The sound is pretty decent. But when we record an album, there's usually four guitars, and there's a little bit more kind of atmospheric layers happening.
All right.
But on the demos, it's just like right, left, and yeah. But the two guitars, most of the time, they don't play the same. There's always a little bit of a difference. Instead of playing a power chord, I would just play like one note on left and the other note on the right. And it just sounds like a power chord when put together. But it has something strange. So yeah, that's definitely the stereo. It's not just the mono riff going in. And so there's a little bit of atmosphere, which is a little bit more difficult to replicate when playing live, but it can be done.
That's interesting.
Hmm.
So the album that you just released is called Dark and Devotion, and it was
Hmm.
released very recently by Hammerheart Records. We spoke in depth about uh, how you came back to the band and uh,
Hmm.
the ideas, the writing for this album. Um, did you feel with the last two albums, which you weren't involved with, um, which were in a different style than I think what
Hmm.
the Pandemia that you wrote for. Did you feel like this album is a return to the original sound of Pandemia, like that very technical, very thrashy,
Hmm.
old school stuff?
I hope so. Yeah, I hope like that's yeah. I was missing a little bit of that songwriting style on the albums. I didn't really listen to them that much. I don't think I've heard them in complete. The two albums that the guys did. I really appreciate that they kept the name running, and they recorded with some incredible producers. But like what I'm doing is slightly different, on the in the composition and the way like things are counted. It's not very kind of uh, it's not in your so much in your face when you listen to the album, but there's a lot of like kind of weird changes. Like I don't always just do like 4 4 4. There's just a beat
Yeah.
missing here, or there's something there, and I love that kind of style. And so that's definitely back in there. I did a lot of that on the Riven album, on the third album, and the chords, are different. Just because I don't want to just play like regular metal, meat and potato metal with power chords. I use a lot of different chords. Keeping the root notes, but just kind of move it around, just for whatever, for a little bit more texture. So that's back, and yeah, like I say, the riffs, they don't come from a rehearsal space; they come from, I don't know, somewhere out there. So that's probably the main difference. Yeah, yeah.
Did you also come up with the themes and the concept of the album?
Hmm. Yeah, I had it in my head for a while. We were. I believe I had it before Dream Theater, on the latest
Okay.
album. Yeah, I believe I put my hand up and I just say, hey, they just stole it from us. But of course, yeah, no, like, well, it's very similar to what they described. It's just all about this like stuff that happens at night, and it's very hard to control. But in our kind of approach, is it's not that they can be stuff that's in dreams, that can happen to you, like some recurring themes, like I don't know, sleep paralysis or drowning in water, or kind of fear of heights, whatever. Then there's another aspect, like what we explore on the nightmare paradox, where you kind of can't sleep, and you're terrible, but you just kind of rise up to the challenge, and decide to do something with it, not just being the victim, and you eventually find a way to use these moments for creativity or for kind of, showing just not being a victim, of your nighttime anxieties. So yeah, it was the whole album was like, why don't we just do an album about one concept rather than just having multiple lyrics that are kind of disjointed. So yeah, that was the idea I had. I presented it, as the guys were okay with it, and then our singer, he also wrote a bunch of lyrics based on these themes that we worked on together, which was pretty cool. Yeah, and I like that finally we have something that's a little bit more cohesive. There's some kind of, you have the album cover with this guy kind of going into the night hunting his demons rather than, being the one that's being hunted. So that's yeah, there was a whole concept around it, and so far, I'm really kind of very happy with the way it turned out.
And I think you mentioned that you also suffer from sleep disorders, as do I.
Yeah.
I suffer from pretty
Oh,
bad
sorry, mate.
insomnia. Was this
Yeah.
cathartic for you to work through these themes?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. Still waiting for the moment. I was like, what the fuck? I wrote an album, It's like, what else was supposed to, I was starting hoping for a little bit more resolve, when the when the album comes out. No, no, I'm kidding. Definitely getting better. It takes work, it takes commitment. I don't know, maybe I'm straying away from the interview, but I'm very keen on like the work of Carlos Castaneda, and whatever he did with around dreaming and stuff. And I have a good support from the community, that kind of left behind when Castaneda left in the 90s. And we are exploring that. I have a really good friend who is supporting me, and I support him, in kind of exploring the dreaming world in the nighttime. And it takes kind of consistent work, and it gets better. It gets better, and especially like the approach, of like going after your demons and kind of just resolving them, or at least dealing with them one by one. It definitely helps. Yeah, but it's a journey, and aging and stuff. Of course, it's not, you don't have your sleep as you would have as a teenager. Where you could just be in bed for days, on end.
Yeah.
It's Things are changing. You just have to adjust and sort of, yeah, just stay kind of keeping some sort of resolve, that we will find a way here, because the worst is just to kind of give in and start using some props, and drinking and whatever to kind of mitigate the effects of the insomnia, and it's kind of down that spiral. But it's definitely no fun. I'm not taking it lightly. If anyone is struggling with this, I would really recommend, seeking out help, finding some community around it, and then just get support.
So where did you end up recording this album?
Yeah, we had a bunch of locations. We wanted to uh, do the drums in a room with a good acoustics. So we chose one of the really good studios in Czech. The Barn, with the producer Dan Frimo. So we went there, recorded drums over 3 days. We did a pre-production, so the drummer was super prepared. He had everything in the click tracks and everything. So we just went there and he just crushed it. I think he just recorded everything in 2 days, actually. And the third day was just we did some kind of overdubs, and in case we heard like the stick hitting a rim of a tom or whatever. But otherwise, he just really went for it, and that was done in like pretty much 2 days in incredible kind of precision. So we didn't even have to do much editing then. So that was the drums. Once we had the drums, then we went into my kind of home studio, and I started recording guitars over the drums. Like the DI signal, and with my tones that are considered kind of fitting. And once we had the guitars, then we did the bass and the vocals. So the vocals came over, Irka, and we would do the arrangements first. And if they were fitting well, we would immediately record them. So the vocals were also recorded at my home studio, and I think it really turned out well, considering. So everything besides the drums you hear on there, it was just recorded in like a dedicated room, in my house, where I did a lot of the recording, because I just didn't want to have the stress of being in a studio, on the clock. Just wanted to be sure that, and also perhaps I felt a little bit of inadequacy, coming back after 20 years. I wanted to make sure that I have the space I need to record it properly, you know. And then, if I don't like some part, I don't have to compromise. I can go back to it like a few days later and try again, or add a little bit more color here and there. So that was the recording. And then we looked for where we're gonna master it and mix it. Uh, and we ended up choosing this studio that's based out of Portugal called Demigod Recordings. Incredible studio. The guy Miguel Tereso, he's got an incredible pair of ears. Yeah, I just the stuff we heard coming out of that studio was very, very much very kind of different to what most of other productions were sounding like. And yeah, we had to wait, for him to have a slot ready, and then he spent like a month or something just doing all the editing, mixing, mastering. There was about 3, 4 revisions before we said, okay, that's the one, and then we settled on the final product towards the end of August 2024.
So I know the work of Miguel Tereso, who mixed and mastered the album, because
Mm,
he's worked on a few bands I've heard, like Garia. Uh,
mm.
was this the first album that you worked with Miguel
Oh
on?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It was very fresh, very fresh. We were looking like everywhere. I had a good connection with a guy from Unleashed. He's the guitarist, Frederick, who, yeah, we were exchanging emails and stuff and talking about ideas. And he also proposed that he could mix and master the album. Then with Dan Swano as well, I was trying to figure out his availability and rates. And, we were talking quite a bit on over the email. But then we were listening to Miguel's work, especially the latest Analepsy. I don't know if you've heard that one. Something quiescence or quintessence. It's got a blue cover. I heard the sound. I was just like, I just fell in love with the sound of it. Not much with the music was a little bit too brutal for me, but the sound of it, the sonic kind of expression of what was on the album was just unbelievable. I just love listening to it just for the sound of it. It was just so well done. So we were very happy that he said yes, and he also kind of enjoyed working on it. Towards the end of the mixing, he was just saying like, "Man, it's just there's some amazing earworms there," and he actually really kind of went into the music and started kind of enjoying it himself. Which is great to have that kind of element. When someone is working on it, that they also enjoy it. So it was a great experiment that worked out well. Yeah, and we will see what happens next. If we go somewhere else again. But we kind of went into the tradition of working with like kind of international producers. We did the first three albums in Czech, and then when I wasn't in the band, the guys started working with uh, kind of foreign producers, which I think was a great addition to the kind of repertoire, to band, the toolbox. So like they did an album with Andy Klassen, from Holy Moses. And then they did an album with Valdemar Sorikta, the guy who produced and recorded some of our absolutely favorite albums in the 90s. So, yeah, so we decided to kind of go in that direction. And even though we could have mixed it and mastered in Czech, for like fraction of the cost, we decided to just kind of go for it and use Miguel and Demico Recordings. And I think it was a great decision.
What did you want Miguel to bring to the finished album, the finished mix?
Hmm. Yeah, it's really like the kind of intensity and the clarity of the sound. He has such a beautiful separation of the instruments, but at the same time, it's very cohesive. You can really tell what bass is doing and what the left or right guitar is doing, or what each hit of the drums. But at the same time, it's massive. It's a wall of sound. So I think that was what we were aiming for, and a little bit of modernity. We didn't want to have like a legacy sound, which is becoming also kind of uh, very common in the on the metal scene. We were more like aiming like, okay, our music is kind of rooted in the old school. Let's try and make the sound a little bit more modern. And yeah, just having the loudness levels and like the intensity of what is expected of more modern productions. I think it's a great mix, and that's maybe something that's making us a little bit more unique. So we're not kind of just modern or just old school, kind of mixing it up in the production. And I think Miguel has a good approach to this. He is very meticulous. You would hear things, in the guitars and the editing that I would never notice. So he was very kind of essential for the mixing process for us. He's a big part of how the album turned out. If you hear the demos, you can definitely tell. He elevated it like 2, 3 levels up. Yeah, yeah. So good he is. Yeah.
So, this is backtracking a little bit, but you mentioned
Hmm.
that your drummer Jakob is a new addition to the band. I think this is his first album with the band, right?
Yeah, correct.
Uh, do you want to say a little bit how you met Jakob and how he ended up joining Pandemia?
Yeah, he's yeah. No, it's not a funny story. I'm just like, yeah, I'm just yeah, I'm just very happy, that he's in the band. That's, yeah, it just gives me joy. Yeah, he was introduced by a mutual friend of ours. He's a drummer in the band called Coward. Old friends. We pretty much started playing at the same time and went through a lot together. And their drummer, he knew that we were trying to bring the band back. And we tried to play with one of the older drummers and tried to make it work, but it was not flowing. And then, yeah, this guy from Coward, the drummer, said like, hey, there's a friend of mine comes over. He's a drummer. He loves this kind of fast music. He's very busy. He already plays in like six bands. But why don't you give him a call and see, if you could work something out? It's like, okay. He never heard of Jakub before. And then we got in touch, our bass player Yarda, he contacted Jakub. They had a really good conversation on the phone, and Jakub was still kind of unsure because he was already so busy. But then we went to meet him. He drove over. He's like 2 hours away from where we live. So we drove over, met him, had a dinner together, was talking about all sorts of things. Then he was like, okay, maybe he was still kind of unsure, but he was like, okay, I'll give it a shot. So we kind of suggested that he learns 3 songs from our discography. And then we met him again like 1 month later at the beginning of 2022. And he already had he learned the songs, and we never heard him play it so well. It was just beautiful just to be with him. Even like being able to keep up, with his skills and the precision and speed. And it was just like, wow, we will do anything to get this guy in the band, and he just said, yes, let's go for it. And so he had to kind of accommodate for us a little bit more. He became the drummer, and like a few months later, we already recorded 2 singles that were mixed by Russ Russell, the guy who works a lot with Napalm Death. And
Oh,
so,
okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
he did. Yeah, Russ, yeah, he's amazing. Yeah, oh, poor Russ, I think he struggled. He has some terrible health issues in the last few years, and I think he's just coming out of it. But amazing guy. He was also like on the table to be mixing the record for us, but he was just his body collapsed completely, like 2023, I think. Yeah, he was just not able to do anything in the studio. But I think he's getting better. Anyway, so that's how Jakub came around. It was sort of like kind of he wasn't super sure, but once we started playing together, it was like, okay, there's something here. Let's take it as far as we can. And he's really been a great asset to the band. Playing live, he's super solid. He's yeah, I think we've just kind of stepped up a few levels, having him in the band and being able to play really fast kind of double kicks, you know, blast beats. We could speed up some of the songs from the past. It was a great, it was a great encounter, a little bit of magic. We really were starting to get a little bit desperate. Like, well, who are we gonna find? Everybody was so busy, and like, but then with Jakub, it's kind of clicked, and he's been with us ever since. And we are now entering like year 4, with him in the band. And yeah, it's really going well. Yeah,
That's awesome. Yeah, he sounds great on the album.
yeah,
Puts in a great
cool. Yeah,
performance.
he's good. Yeah, he was like, yeah, he has like, I'm like, I'm happy with just one type of blast beat. I'm just like the traditional European blast, and he just wrote like 5 others, and he made them sound cool. It didn't go like into some crazy brutal death. It still sounds like us, but he really like tried to freshen it up a little bit. It's like, okay, I didn't even know there was so many different blast styles, but yeah, he definitely kind of weaved it in, and it's cool. It sounds great.
So at this point, Pandemia has been around for 30 years or more.
Hmm.
Is is there anything you still want to do with this band, either musically or in terms of touring or anything else?
Hmm. Yeah, it's a good question. I think like musically, I think we are good. I don't like personally. I think maybe you guys might have still some dreams, but I think the Dark and Devotion could be the ultimate Pandemia album. So musically, super happy. Whatever happens in the future, if there is a need for another album, we will see how that's gonna work. In terms of like, I would love the band to be a little bit more recognized internationally. Which is slowly happening. We are getting back. We are getting back to like being in the press and doing interviews again. Thanks to guys like you, and it's something that was a little bit missing. And just want to bring band, to the international stage. I think when I was kind of out of the band and the guys were, I think they started focusing a little bit too much on the Czech Republic, and the kind of Central Europe. And I would love for us to kind of break out of it, be able to play some good festivals somewhere in Western Europe, maybe America, wherever, where we get the invitation, maybe return to Latin America, where we toured extensively. We played, I don't know, 60 concerts there in the past. It was ridiculous what we did there. Maybe some of that, but yeah, just staying humble, staying relevant on the scene, and keep spreading like the energy of the original death metal. Just keep bringing it to people, and at the same time, not burning out. Not just like overdoing it, and just like so, just in a way that's healthy, keeping the band growing. And now with Hammerheart, I think that's just I don't know what's how the stars have aligned. That they kind of took to us, but I fell in love with the album when we sent it over to them, and they're doing such a great job. We have distribution everywhere now, like through they work very closely with Napalm Records, so we have the Napalm distribution for the album. So anyone anywhere can get it through there. It's just it's a dream come true. So just keep kind of doing the good work, and just making sure that the investment that Hammer had made into us, we need to kind of I still feel like we need to prove to them that it was definitely worth it for them, that we are the band that fits well within their roster, and we are, we're gonna make it work for them. So that's how I feel about it. Maybe if you ask the other guys, they might have some other kind of priorities, which is cool. This is just how I see it. A little bit more international exposure, playing some cool fests, maybe do some tour here and there. But like musically, I'm very satisfied at the moment. There isn't much left unsaid, from in terms of recordings and stuff.
So, as we're having this conversation, festival season is underway. Do you guys have
Hmm.
anything booked or anything planned for the rest of the summer, maybe later in the year?
Yeah, yeah. I think the summer we kind of we came a little bit too late into it with the album. The album just came out last week, and the promoters need to hear that, right? So we did not get into any of the like kind of bigger festivals. We are playing some really cool ones in Czech in June. We are playing the Czech Death Fest. We are playing just like 2 slots before I Am Morbid. Before the David Vincent and Pete's Sandoval's version of Morbid Angel. So that's super exciting. We are playing the Apocalyptic Form of Death Festival, which is one of the really bigger, kind of cool Czech underground fests. And then, this summer we're still leaving it open. Haven't got anything confirmed. And then in October we gonna kick off like the 30 years of Pandemia celebration in our hometown gig, and we have a special guest, the Swiss band called Messiah. They
Oh,
are
wow.
one of the godfathers of thrash death metal. I think to me, like they almost released their first European death metal album, like in '86 into Abermelin. To me, that's death metal, and they kind of Yarda, our bass player, give credit to him. He kept chasing them and chasing them until they said yes. So they're gonna play our 30th anniversary. They're gonna do like 40th anniversary, maybe 45 for them already. Gig, in our hometown in October, and everybody's invited who is in the vicinity of, Czech Republic, because that's gonna be huge, and we are super excited about it. And we are working on some mini tours. We have a booking agent as well, Nick Grima, who is scouting, the landscape for us. But it was important for us to get the album out, and we will see, with the impact of it. I'm sure like the promoters will start picking up, but it's super, super complex situation out there. Everybody's scraping for concerts and festival slots, and a lot of money is being paid by bands just to play somewhere. It's just we want to do it more organically and get get booked, because someone wants to have us there. So we will be patient and it will come. Well, I can see like the 2026, there's definitely going to be more festivals with our presence.
Very cool. So, Darkened Devotion is out now through Hammerheart
Mhm.
Records. Alex, please tell everyone how they can order the album. What's the best way to get it?
Online, definitely online. Check out the Hammerheart store, check out Napalm Records distribution network. They all have it. You can simply Googling Pandemia Dark and Devotion will give you plethora of options, where to find the album. It came out as a digipack and two different colors of vinyl, which is amazing. And yeah, I think if you come to our gigs, of course, you can get your merch signed and, you can get shirts and stuff. So that's another way of getting to our stuff, just attending our concerts. And we also have a web shop on our own website, pandemia-deathmetal.cz. There's a shop where you can order stuff and support the band directly. So that's also a recommended way. If you live in the region where we can ship to, we are super happy to just send our stuff over and just throw in a bunch of goodies for you guys. Uh, that's where you can find the album. Definitely, just simple Google search will. There's so many results now. It's just unbelievable how well indexed it is and how the Napalm Records distribution network is set in the world. It's just everywhere.
It's awesome.
Mm,
The two vinyl versions that Hammerheart put out, I believe one is a gold splatter and the other is a blue,
mm.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
correct. Yeah, that's really cool looking. Yeah, there's we put like an unboxing video on our YouTube channel. So if anyone wants to see, how the physical records look and uh, what's actually in the, in what is the content, of each record, then definitely you can see it there.
And does all your merch go through your Bandcamp page, or do you have another merch shop?
Our Bandcamp is quite. I don't think we have anything there actually. We definitely need to up our merge game. We're not so kind of consistent or not so. You're not quite there. We have our own web shop on our website, but we will definitely offer more possibilities to get our merge. And the Bandcamp is a little bit left behind. I must say. I don't even know if we should kind of go into it. What do you think? Is Bandcamp a good place to sell stuff? Is it kind of, do people see it as the good source of buying merchandise? So,
I mean, I know for most people, especially in independent music, Bandcamp is the go-to for buying music and getting merch and stuff like that. And some people even use it as a uh, another form of social media to network
mm,
with their audience. There have been a lot of changes to Bandcamp in terms of the ownership, and so I don't
mm,
know what the future is going to hold. I actually spoke to somebody
mm,
who plays in a band called Woe, an American black metal
mm,
band, who started his own alternative called Amp Wall,
mm,
AMPWALL. Um,
mm,
I think for now, as far as the streaming platforms go, Bandcamp is one of the better ones. I don't know as far as like shipping and stuff
mm,
like that if they're the best way to go. I think
mm.
they're
Yeah,
probably cheaper or more efficient ways of
yeah,
buying physical media than Bandcamp.
mm. Yeah. I think like I I did some experiments with Bandcamp, but like the commission they take was a little bit too high. You know,
Yeah.
so we decided to do it through our own website. With there's no commission, and and it just all goes directly to the band. But I just don't know about the kind of how much reach we gain. Maybe Bandcamp would give us a little bit more exposure. We'll explore that. If anyone has any idea, if anyone out there wants to kind of uh, propose a solution, then I'm definitely gonna listen and find out, what we can do. But maybe you can just, sell some shirts to Hammerheart store as well. I can speak to the guys at Hammerheart. Be another kind of outlet for accessing our merchandise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If people want to follow you guys and get updates on tours and festival appearances, what's the best way to do that? You mentioned your website.
Yeah. Definitely website would be like the source number one, it's the proper kind of proper way of showcasing what we do. It's being kept up to date, so that's cool. And yeah, then we have
That's pandemiadeathmetal.cz.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Uh, we have Facebook, of course, Pandemia. I don't know what the kind of moniker is. It's just you will find it. You will see our faces there. Facebook, Instagram. Uh, what is the other stuff? Yeah, I think these are the two. We just have Facebook and Instagram right now. Yeah, there's no effort going into like Blue Sky or X. It's just yeah, Facebook, Instagram for social media, and yeah, you're just keeping it there like that. And of course, if you want to stream our music, we are everywhere. We are everywhere. I would probably recommend Tidal. Tidal has got the best sound quality, and it's yeah, like I think that our profile there is really well kept. So that's also one way of listening to us. And we have a YouTube channel, which we will revive now as we go into the 30-year celebration. So we're gonna start posting some rare videos there, kind of chronicling the uh, journey of pandemia. From the I guess we still have some footage from like '94, so we will start there and then just do like a decade by decade kind of videos. Yeah, which is gonna be a lot of fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Alex, you've been very generous with your time, but do you want to say anything else?
Jim, I think I'm good. I think that's enough of me rabbiting on, about like about my inner world and then pandemia. I'm super grateful for your support here. I'm happy for anyone who wants to reach out, and needs anything about the band. Please get in touch. We really kind of passionate about death metal and about the music, and hopefully we'll make it to Southeast Asia one day. To play a bunch of shows or just do some promo tour or something. So that would be amazing. So I would really love to learn more about local scenes, especially the beginnings when you mentioned like the parallel between where we come from, how you guys were restricted as well, in a similar time. That's really something that got me going. But I just want to make sure that people know that we are very grateful for everyone who buys our records, buys merchandise, who gives it a play or saves to a playlist, and supports the band because it keeps us going, and we notice that, and it keeps us motivated to just keep going with the music. And we just recommend to everyone to keep supporting real metal and just stay, keep enjoying this beautiful form of art that's never gonna go away, and that's such a strong underground presence that it's just a beautiful expression of art, through that metal.
Very cool. Thanks, Alex.
Yeah.
Thank you, Vam.
Thank you very much, Adrian. Yeah. Have a good day. Is it day? No, it's night for you. Like, holy shit, it must be really late for you. It's 7 in the afternoon here in the evening. What time is it for you? Where are you?
It's 1 a.m., but that's okay. I've got bad insomnia anyways,
Holy
so
shit. I'm so sorry. So sorry about.
I would have
Yeah,
been up anyways.
okay, so you have hope you hope you have good dreams.